Hey everyone, welcome to the conversation today. I am Ben Eubanks, your host for HR Tech Talks, and I'm so glad to have you here today. As you can see on the screen, we're talking to the team over at UKG. This is going to be a unique sort of experience for us today because if you remember a month or two ago, we talked to the team at Kronos right as they were coming over and starting that merger process, and now they're official as UKG. So we're going to talk to Suhail Halai today about some of the work they're doing there, some of the AI behind it. I'm hoping to get to that because you know me, I'm a little bit of a nerd for the AI stuff, and I want to talk about that in the discussion. And he's going to talk about some fun things like engagement, how we can have a bigger impact on the business, how we can really lead as HR leaders. And so I'm excited for that part of the conversation. As you're getting tuned in, please pop your name in the not your name, pop in the chat. Let us know where you're listening in from, where you're connecting from. And as we go through today, please, you get a question, you've got something you want to comment on, you want to, call me out for saying the wrong thing, whatever you'd like to do. Throw something in the chat, throw something in the comments. We love to interact with you and see you as part of this as a participant. So without further ado, I'll drop that off and bring Suhail up for the conversation. Welcome, sir.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ben, for having me.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm really excited about today's discussion. Diving into this, as I said, I'm a little bit of a nerd for the AI stuff. We're chatting back and forth before we started recording. Things like engagement; those things are critical, and important for HR leaders, and it's things that you and I love to talk about. So I'm excited to dive into that. Before we go too far into it, take just a second and tell us about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Sure thing. My background, really, I got my start in the world of management consulting. I started with working mainly with financial organizations, worked with the Fortune 100, pretty much. Did some work with the insurance industry as well. I really came at this more from a systems angle. But then in 2014, I became part of a startup called Canjoya that did more work on employee engagement. And the company had kind of been at it for a while, trying to figure out, how to get the best insights from the data that was in front of them. And so because we were focused so much on the HR side of things, I actually had the good fortune of working with, a lot of Bay Area companies. Since we were headquartered in San Francisco, we had Twitter an earshot away. Uber was kind of, a few buildings away. So we got to really sit down and got to work with some of the greatest minds in the industry. And, as we got more involved with designing solutions that would meet the needs of these companies, I obviously got more experience trying to, not just figure out what their HR teams wanted, but also figure out what was the business problem they were really trying to solve for. And so that's sort of been my journey personally. Today, we've onboarded more than 1,500 customers on these solutions. I have personally onboarded more than about 100 of our largest customers. So I'm happy to share some insights based on what I've seen.
Wonderful. And you're based, for anybody who's curious where you are now, you have been in California for many years, but you're...
That's right. I've actually kind of been in this whole bi-coastal mode for a while. My wife's actually a physician. So for her rotations, we had to sort of be present on the East Coast because there's a lot more opportunities for her on the East Coast. But I've always sort of straddled both coasts. But recently, I was in California for about 6 years, and now I've moved to Atlanta. So Atlanta is home now.
Wonderful. All right. We're glad to have you here in the Southeast. I'm just across the border over in Alabama, and we're glad to have you here. So let's talk a little bit about, again, I can't resist tapping into AI as part of the conversation. We're going to talk about supporting employees, all those kinds of things in the discussion, but let's talk about AI a little bit because I feel like when I talk about it, there's always this opportunity to educate people on what it is, how it works, those kinds of things. And I'd love to talk about or highlight, if you don't mind, some of the applications for that, because you hinted a little bit ago, right? Understanding what your employees need from you, really seeing that. That's where Canjoya got its start, is helping employers understand kind of the needs and the sentiments of the employees before they rolled up. And now a couple roll-ups later, you're now at UKG. Talk about some of the applications, if you don't mind, for AI, for machine learning in the roles of HR leaders that really help them to understand and grasp how it can help.
Sure thing. There's usually a lot of, FUD around AI, which, I walk into so many meetings and rooms where people are curious. There's obviously a lot of media and noise around AI and what it might, what kinds of implications it might have. And the most basic thing I compare it to is a calculator. We wouldn't be able to send man to the moon, and now to Mars, without with outdated technology. So we kind of need. There's always been the need, that's just sort of ingrained into us. If we want to go far, we just have to have the ability to process. It used to be that we were only processing numbers. AI has only expanded the scope beyond numbers to being able to now do all kinds of qualitative insights, processing and consuming large chunks of data, and being able to give you insight and guidance. But I think at the crux of it, it really is about intent, right? If if you whether it's a calculator or whether it's a firearm, whether it's a cannonball or an arrow, right? It's all about what do you intend to do with this much power. And obviously, with great power comes great responsibility. A philosopher once said that, or you might have read that in a comic book, right? But the truth is, the problem we were trying to solve for was to enhance the humanity of businesses, enhance and give them the ability to really connect with their people, to make the business leaders better business leaders. One of the biggest points of failure, Ben, as you've actually pointed out in some of your books, has been that some managers are often just young and they just don't even have the coaching they need to become successful people leaders, right? So what can technology do to enhance those areas, to provide assistance to those people so that they can either get the coaching they need, the guidance they need, or maybe just the timely nudge that they need to maybe perform a little action that might have larger repercussions downstream, right? So AI, we could talk about the computer science aspect of AI, for days and weeks, but at the heart of it, AI is an attempt, I think, um, for science to finally step up and make technology accessible. To me, that's what AI really represents. It's about customization, being able to create a tailored experience, not just for the end user, which might be an employee, which might be a customer, but also tailoring it for the practitioners, whether you are in the business of providing customer service, whether you're in the business of providing accurate deliveries on time, whether you are a shipping warehouse, or you are an HR practitioner that's responsible for managing a very large and dynamic workforce. We are all headed into this gig economy. There's a huge transition that the whole COVID crisis has brought in. So, for us to be prepared to handle all of these things, will we go through an acquisition? Will we go through a large merger? Will Google get split up into smaller companies? There's just so much change, right? Even with, doesn't matter what size of a company you are. But how do you prepare for all of these changes? How do you become, in many ways, we have been on this trajectory of becoming androids ourselves. I can't help but think, with you on, with the headset on, we are already there, right? We are kind of fusing with tech in a way like we've never fused before. And so are you going to be prepared with the right tools to be able to be more effective and be more relevant individually? But philosophically, I think amongst all of these tools and the noise they create, I think the bigger responsibility we all have is to have vision, to take the time to take a step back and decide where all of this is going. And I don't mean this in some kind of altruistic, big divine way, but I feel that this is a problem with knowledge. When you start accumulating, my wife's a physician, and she has mountains of books that she actually reads, and sometimes she just doesn't know where to look and what to focus on because there's just so much new content. There's a thick journal that gets mailed to her every month. It's about 600 pages, and there's just so much information we're all consuming. So it falls on us to sort of get disciplined, to create that structure, create that organization within ourselves, to make better decisions, to make smarter decisions, and that's where AI helps.
Wow, goodness, you took that in so many directions. I'm trying to decide where to even follow up on that. So I think part of that is when you said the vision piece, it made me think about, as you started off, there's so much, there are headlines every day. AI is going to save us. AI is going to kill us all. Like it's all over the place. There's a lot of misinformation out there about what it can and can't do. And one of the things that really stuck out to me, you said, we need to have a vision for what it can be, what we want our work to look like, and how can we use this to help aid us in that, right? What kind of experiences are we trying to create around us? And we're tying that back to this conversation around connecting with people and connecting with the workforce, helping them to do their work better, giving them the tools they need, giving them the support that they need from us as business leaders. One of the things that you and I kind of chatted about a little bit ago that ties into that is the fact that we as HR leaders, that's my background. You're on the tech side, I'm more on the HR side. We like to talk about engagement like it's an outcome. Well, my vision is I want my people to be engaged. But the problem is when you try to sell that vision internally, it sometimes falls flat. Will you talk about that a little bit and why you think that is and what sort of outcomes we should be thinking about instead?
That's actually such a good question. And we all have had this aha moment. When I walk into a customer's office, I usually get brought in by someone with an organizational psychology background, and they've usually dedicated their life to making employees more effective, boosting productivity, understanding what it is that makes an organization a holistic sort of a parent body in a way that will foster the unique strengths of its people. But when it comes to employee engagement, I often find that our vocabulary has sort of been so academic. And this is actually not just limited perhaps even to employee engagement. This is perhaps, you will find this in the doctor's office where the doctors are mumbling, all kinds of technical language that a common person doesn't quite understand. And what I find is that business leaders don't have the time or the patience to care for employee engagement, right? What they care about is business outcomes. They want to know, how does this affect the bottom line? And look, I'm not going to say that the business leaders are short-sighted in any way. They know where this is going, but it's kind of like any other science, where if you start going down and becoming too vague, you're never going to get to any measurable sort of an outcome. So to me, employee engagement, what I discovered, is really more about establishing an emotional commitment, whether that's, it's bi-directional, right? So it's not just from the employee towards the organization, but to me, engagement is also from the organization to the individual, right? It means that a person really cares about what they do. They care about not just the paycheck. They're not just worried about their next promotion that they're about to get, but they're working on behalf of the goals of the organization. There needs to be an alignment between the individual's goals and the organization's goals. An engaged computer programmer, for example, will work overtime just to resolve this one bug that has escaped all kinds of quality control. An engaged clerk will pick up trash from the store even when no one is looking, right? We've all heard of this fabled story of the janitor that polished the restroom in this high school, and he just wanted his restroom to be the best restroom in the world. And that is employee engagement. But what it really relates to, in my opinion, is things like customer satisfaction, things like how long someone might stay at the company. Retention is a technical word for it, but do your people really care? I've actually worked with a customer, a very large manufacturing company that has global operations in Africa, in Asia, and one of the big issues they were seeing was they had employees that would quit every year. This was normal. They have a seasonal workforce, but then every year these workers would go out, take a 2-month, 3-month break, come back to work in the factories because hey, someone has to make those iPhones in those factories to get ready for the holiday season. But what happened was there was a lot of dissatisfaction with people not, there was changes. They were not aligned with what they might have already developed a skill for. If they're proficient with manufacturing one kind of device. They were suddenly, when they came back next year, they were moved into a position where they were maybe making a watch. So there was a lot of knowledge and information that was obviously transferable, but there was also this disruption in how these people could be productive. And so we found that was one reason why many of their people, didn't care as much. They were not connected to a mission within the organization, within the company. And when we did these kinds of annual surveys, we found that, by giving them a sense of consistency, giving them a sense of a continuity, they were actually more likely to come back and be excited about the job. So it's funny, this company that I'm talking about, they would replace 80% of their manufacturing workforce every year, and they were able to bring that number down to replacing 70%. Now, 80 and 70 doesn't seem like a very large jump or downshift, but when you're looking at 180,000 employees worldwide, that is a huge number of people, right? And simply because this company took the time to listen in, to lean in, and understand the stories of their people. Now, this is beyond data points, right? A data point might tell you how far an employee lives from their factory. A data point might tell you that this employee has a base rate of $10 an hour. And a data point might tell you that this person received X number of raises last year or over the last 5 years. But it won't tell you what is on their minds, what's in their hearts. It's only when you almost have a conversation with your people, right? Think about what you would discover if you could have a cup of coffee with every single employee, with every single individual in the organization. If you could sit down with them and very genuinely, as a friend, try to understand what their needs are, what their concerns are. I think we kind of get into this antagonistic relationship with people, but the truth is, if we could, in fact, align ourselves, we could actually be more productive. So that's what business leaders care about. They care to know what are the challenges on the ground. They want to know what's the low-hanging fruit. Why do people keep quitting in this one pocket within the organization? Maybe it's the location in Arlington, Texas, that's having a high amount of turnover, or maybe it's in Memphis. We have people that we've been recruiting from really good backgrounds, but they don't stick around like we expected them to. Are these people struggling because their innovative ideas are not being heard? We know about Toyota and its quality circles, but Toyota was really successful as a brand because they listened to their people. They empowered their workers to really make those suggestions that would improve the overall quality within the company. Are we doing that anymore? Right? I feel like we've deferred so much to automation that we've sort of given up on the human capital aspect of it, right? We sometimes forget, we say HR, but we have to remember we are also human capital managers, right? And HR really does need to come back and claim that seat at the business table where we are in charge of our people and getting the best out of them.
One of my sayings this year, I don't know why this year, it's been a crazy year in a lot of ways, but one of my sayings this year is we as HR leaders need to understand our talent the same way that finance understands, hey, this piece of property is in this location and here's what it cost us, right? We know all the details about it. They understand those kind of details about things like chairs and computers and desks, but we don't understand the detail about what's driving people, what they need, what connects with them. And you gave examples across different geographies, different types of industries, and that's fundamentally, it comes down to the very human needs that we have when it comes to work. We want to feel like we're making progress towards a goal. We want to feel like we're a part of something bigger than us, not just our own little, I'm building widgets over here in my little corner of the world. No one else cares, and it doesn't matter. There's no real impact. We need to feel like there's a bigger impact. We need to feel like there's progress. We need to feel some ownership or some autonomy in our work, that we have some measure of control over things, not control over everything, but some control over things. And that, at the end of the day, that just comes down to those fundamental human things that drive us at work. And I love the question you asked, is if this focus on mechanizing, automation, right? If those things are actually putting us at a disadvantage because we're forgetting about some of those things that make work human, that make people want to work for us, that make them connect with us. People don't stick with your company because it helps, right? But they don't stick with your company because you have a really easy way to search a database or something. They stick with your company because you treat them like a person, you care about who they are, and they feel like they can really be themselves at your firm, right? Those things, and the tools can help with that, but you've got to have a clear vision. Going back to that word you used earlier, your leadership team, your HR team needs to be casting a very clear vision for that, or you're going to be going at ad hoc, all these different directions instead of really focusing in on what you want that to look like.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm there's so much strategic stuff that comes out of this kind of interaction. There's tactical stuff that comes out of this kind of interaction. So, with a product like ours, for example, when you are listening in, you discover things you never thought possible. I'll give you another example. This sort of pharmaceutical company, but again, very large, more than 80,000 employees worldwide. But because of the kinds of insights that this tool and this platform, and there's many others like this as well, but we tend to focus more on the qualitative side of things. What we were able to uncover was women in their 30s in this one location were complaining about infrastructure. Now you might wonder how useful is that one insight. Now, as you click on that little nugget, you discover that these women in their 30s, a lot of them actually have PhDs. These are your these are your research, your R&D team, right? And they're sitting in the headquarters, and these women were just discussing. This is not a hard number or a hard fact, but they were discussing and describing their anxiety around parking facilities for expectant mothers. All right. It may not sound like a big deal. There was only a pocket of about 50 women in this one location, but when you lean in, when you really listen to what they're talking about, how careless and how disconnected could the company be that they haven't thought about the fact that a lot of these women might be considering, expanding their families, and is the company really thinking about what's best for their people? So making additional parking facilities. This is a very minor thing, and let me give you something more strategic, right? In the same company, we focused on another section within the employee population, and we found that the sales team was discussing a new strategy around drug distribution. And as you dug into this nugget a little bit more, again, focusing on their words, focusing on what they're actually discussing and describing in the surveys, whether these are exit surveys, whether these are pulse surveys, which are sent out each quarter or each month, you began to see a story emerge where there was anxiety around this new drug distribution model. And if I was being perfectly honest, the company ignored that signal. They ignored the fact that their sales team, this population of about 300 people, was actually saying this new drug distribution model was going to fail. All right. And the company ignored it. They went ahead with this change and transition. And ultimately, what happened, fast forward 6 months, is that new strategy actually failed. So if only they would have listened to their people. There's so much, our people are just walking repositories of knowledge. They have experience that no system can truly replace. And sometimes we have to realize whether we ourselves are decision makers or we are relying on some other senior executive members to make those decisions, they may not be connected with the ground reality as much. And so it's in everybody's interest to sort of have that culture of collaboration, that culture of having your people first, which happens to be our company's motto as well. But when you put your people first, you automatically put the business first, is my view.
You're talking about in both of those examples, whether it's something you said small, right? For that audience, it wasn't small. It was enough for them to talk about, right? Mm-hmm. But for both of those examples, it comes down to, is someone listening to me? Is someone hearing what I'm saying? And that's been a problem with employee surveys and other sort of methods for gathering intelligence from employees for years, is if you don't listen, if you don't respond, if you don't acknowledge, then they'll stop telling you, which it doesn't change what's happening. They just don't tell you about it anymore, which is bad in itself. But people are saying, hey, we want you to hear us. We think we have a voice. We want you to understand what's going on. And we care enough to actually call this problem out because we're hoping that you'll actually solve it for us. We did a study last year on what skills matter most in the workplace. We asked learning and talent leaders, and we also asked employees themselves, what skill do you think matters the most going forward as far as success in the workplace? And the number one skill, both audiences separate, they didn't know what the other was talking, what the other one was saying. Both of them agreed that communication, right, being able to listen to someone else, being able to hear their issue and being able to respond to them in a human kind of way, was the number one thing that we want from people. Because as you kind of pointed out, like, the tools can do great things. They can illuminate information, they can highlight this, they can shed light on really specific nuances that I, as a human, I could not talk to enough people in a global organization with tens of thousands of employees and figure out what any one population needed. It'd be too hard to get that fine and granular. But the tools can help us to do that. They can illuminate that, but it's up to us to actually come in and solve those problems, to listen to the people and react and respond. And in some cases, you do that and the right things happen. In some cases, you don't listen and it fails, and everybody gets to say, I told you so. Right? We tried to tell you. We tried to warn you. But I love those examples to illustrate just that fundamental importance of listening to your people, caring about what they have to say, because they do. There's not very many employees, I would say, the average employee at least, doesn't wake up in the morning saying, I really hope my company fails today. I hope that they, burn, everything just, falls apart and it's just a miserable. They don't want that, but they can become disengaged if you're not listening to them when they're trying to give you those signals.
Right. That's so true.
Wonderful. Awesome. So if someone's listened to the conversation today and they're curious, I mean, we talked about a lot of really high level things as far as how the workplace is shifting and changing, some of the value of automation for helping us understand what people need, AI wrapped into that conversation a little bit. If someone's curious, they want to know more about what UKG is up to on that front, about helping employers understand what those needs are of your workforce, helping them understand what those insights are and how to dig into those so they can help support them, like you're doing with like you said, over 1,000 customers around the world so far. What's the best way to do that?
Well, I think the most important thing to look out for is to remove and eliminate friction, to make your systems, make your solutions more accessible to people. I think one of the bigger challenges I've noticed is we have a workforce that may have access to a lot of smart solutions. They have smartphones and whatnot, but they may not be on the company intranet. They may not be on the single sign-on for whatever reason. So being able to build a solution that is easy to access, that's easy and also available. Again, if you're looking at a global sort of a work environment, it's 7 days a week, 365 days a year, right? So you want to be able to get your solution out there, where you can get in front of people at the right time, and be most effective. I would say, a lot of customers that came to us in seeking these solutions, they had experience working with consultants, but a lot of times that involved a lot of manual work, manual labor. Their leaders were even frustrated because by the time they could produce any kind of insight, it was almost 4 to 6 weeks later, or it was based on all kinds of flawed assumptions about the business. So one thing that AI does really well, much better than humans, is if you train it right, which we've taken the last 12 years to really do, is it can really deliver results free of biases. If you read a book, you're most likely, if you read a lot of books, you're most likely to remember the last book you read, right? So there's all kinds of recency biases. There's personal bias. There's confirmation bias. There's all kinds of stuff that creeps in. And when you design a system right, and that's why we decided to focus on we are not trying to boil the ocean. We are very focused on the employee engagement space, and we're focused on delivering that amazing experience to the people that will touch and feel the system, not only on the side of taking those surveys, and remember, they're not just annual surveys. These are exit interviews. These are, 30-day check-ins with employees, 90-day check-ins with employees. Make sure you have the right tools, the right kind of mentorship setup, and everything else. But then also on the other side of the spectrum, we wanted to give the right tools in the hands of the executives and the managers that make those decisions, that need the insights that this tool generates. And we've made all of this accessible and in real time. So there's no wait, there's no lag. In a matter of a few minutes, as soon as you close out a survey or a process gets executed, you can present these insights in front of folks. And what's really cool, again, I'm a little bit biased maybe, but what's really cool is we're not limiting it to just that one slice in time. We're trying to make this about ongoing development. We've already enabled features where you can link these insights to learning objectives, where you can bring in, training modules. You could connect them to blogs. Amazing, there's amazing content. There's Harvard blogs, HBR blogs. There's amazing TED Talks about, being a good leader or communication skills. It's all the little soft things that will make us better performers as individuals, as also, parts of the organization that we are. So, there's some thought put into this, and I think it's only a reflection of where our customers wanted to go. And I hope that more people sort of join on this mission, where it's not just about an operational view of HR, but really about, again, taking that leadership, being if not at the head of the table, at least at the side of the table, where you have a plan, where you're presenting a strategy to accomplish and align yourselves with the business goals.
Excellent. Man, I love that. I love the piece where it's not just I kind of pointed that out earlier, shedding light on this, but it's also enabling you to take that next step. It's helping us to know what to do next. It's not taking it for us. It's not doing those things for us. And that's one of the things I'm always careful to talk to the HR leaders that I speak with, because some of them are concerned, like, what does this mean for our work, for my job? I'm like, it is not meant to take your place. It's meant to help you figure out the next best step, the next best item. You quoted Spider-Man earlier. I'll quote, I think it's Elsa or Anna, do the next right thing. It helps us know how to do the next right thing, and gives us insight based on things. Again, lots of signals and information that we can't see. We're actually right at our time for today, and I just want to take a second, Suhail. I really appreciate you for sharing your expertise with us, sharing your insights. I feel like we could chat with this for a very long time, diving into this and the nuances and what's available, what the systems are capable of doing, and how they can enable us to be better, not just leaders of people, but leaders in the business. So I just want to take a second and say thank you so much for spending some time with us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Ben. Nice talking to you.
Hey, this has been so much fun. To everybody else out there, if you want to learn more about what Suhail and the rest of the team are up to, you can go to ukg.com to learn more about them, their team, their work. They're doing some really great things across the HR space, some specific things like we discussed today, really helping you to listen to your employees and what they need. They do a little bit of everything now, payroll and workforce management and everything else. It's all kind of rolled together now that the companies have come together. So there's lots of good stuff there. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. Appreciate you. And we will catch you next week on HR Tech Talks.